There it is again. Hey, unhappy employees aren't likely to produce happy customers. You know, sometimes you're like, I'm just focused on the customer. But if you don't focus on your employees, you're going to have a problem. They're the ones ultimately who are taking care of the customer. That's the subject of today's conversation. Hey, everybody. Bill Gallagher, scaling coach and host of the Scaling Up podcast. Every week, we come to you with a couple ideas, couple shows on growing, scaling your business, getting the team right, dialing in the strategy, executing better, optimizing the cash, and surviving the process to maybe even enjoy the growth of your business. That's the world of scaling up. And you'll find all our 500 plus shows at scalingcoach.com, scalingcoach.com. Also, we've got a free course on the stages of growth, like how do you get the strategy right? How do you build a leadership team out? What happens at each stage of growth? Ultimately to the exit of the business, hopefully very profitably, what you need to do, all that is a free little mini course there on our website. We've also got a newsletter. We've got the shows every week. We've got the 500 back shows. We do a workshop every month on getting started with scaling up and getting your mindset right around being ready to use the tools. All that and more at scalingcoach.com. All right, listen, I'm joined now by John DiJulius. He is a rock star in the world of customer service. He's got a line of spas. He consults with companies like Ritz-Carlton, Lexus, and more. And he's just a fantastic expert. He spoke recently to our Scaling Up audience with Vern, and I thought it'd be great to have him on the podcast as well to share some of the stories. He's got a host of his own show, Customer Service Revolution. And he's got this new book, The Employee Experience Revolution, the Employee Experience Revolution that you can get at his website, the DiJuliusGroup.com. We'll put those links and more. We'll talk about the book, what goes in it, the ideas of it. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bill. A pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's really great to have you on. You have so much to share. Talk about your background to get started. How did you come to this world? Like, what made you obsessed with customer experience and ultimately with employee experience? And share a little bit of that kind of background for the audience who doesn't know you.
Yeah, all bizarre accidents, right? I would have bet if I knew you. Yeah, if I would have bet, if I knew you at each stage, that if you would have told me, hey, you own salons, I'd say, how much money do you want to bet? You know, it's the same pattern repeating itself. Met my wife, back in the late 80s. And I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know what it would be. And the only thing I enjoyed was sports and couldn't really, see the connection. But she was this fantastic hairdresser. However, where she worked and, at least in Cleveland, the salons weren't professional. They were horrible at customer experience, didn't take care of the employees, all those things. So, and she had a lot of good friends that loved hair, but would have to eventually quit to go get real jobs because they didn't make enough. They didn't have benefits. They didn't have vacations. They didn't have education. So me and my wife used to talk about, someday we're going to open a salon and do things differently. And we still have these cocktail napkins because we used to go out to bars and, write that down. Take care of the customer really, really well. Take care of the employees really, really well. Give back to the community. We have these napkins that are 30 some years old, still framed. And so we wanted to right a wrong and we wanted to be the best experience in a guest day. That's what we call our customer. Not the best experience of a salon, because if you or your wife goes into a salon today, you then don't leave the salon and go to their nearest competitor to compare, right? So it's kind of irrelevant to a certain degree how a lot of us in business, how we compare to our competitors. If I have you in as a business coach today, and you do a workshop with my team, I then don't have another business coach in tomorrow and say, man, Bill was so much better, right? You're probably the only business coach I'm dealing with for now. But maybe when I call my lawyer, my accountant, other professionals, I'm like, God, why don't they treat me as well as Bill? Why don't they call me back? Why didn't they anticipate my need like Bill did? And that was ours. We wanted to be the best experience in our guest day wherever they went, right? Kind of have that hangover. So it took off. It worked. And then people said, but one of my frustrations when we were trying to build the customer experience, because we couldn't outspend our competition. We didn't have deeper pockets. We couldn't build nicer places and all that. And we didn't have, the advertising budget, but no one was good at customer experience. So we started doing that. But when I was trying to research customer experience, all the books I read and the speakers I saw on the topic used to give me platitudes. They'd say, take really good care of your customers, treat your customers, the way you want to be treated. And that was really frustrating to me because what does that mean? Or
Yeah.
I'd hear a story about how you went to Nordstrom's, loved these pair of shoes, but they didn't have them in your size. And the Nordstrom's clerk ran down to Macy's, got them, bought them, brought back to you and sold them to you. That's a great story. But the frustrating part was you didn't tell me how you got that employee to do that. And would that was Sally. Would Judy do it? Or would you have to get Sally to do it? All those things. So that's where I started, studying customer service and the great companies in the Southwest and Disney and the Ritz-Carltons and all of those, and figuring out there was a methodology that they all had in common. And then because of the noise and growth we were making, people started asking me to speak on customer experience. And I didn't think it was going to be a career. And then 2003, my first book came out on customer service. And pretty much then it took me from being a salon owner that spoke a few times a year, to a speaker that owns salons. And I really haven't been involved in the salons since then. Still own them, but not involved in the day to day. And then the DiJulius Group was born, and it turned into a consulting company. And I've written some books and worked with some pretty cool companies.
Yeah, you have. Yeah, talk to us about
and
then.
I'm on Bill Gallagher's podcast. That's
now you finally
now
arrived.
I've made it. I've arrived. Everything else is a footnote.
Yeah, that's what I keep telling my wife and kids. It's funny how, I fly around the world. I meet with people in different cities and that kind of thing. And
they listen to you. You're the gospel
guy, right? And then the people in my neighborhood are like, "Oh, there's Bill again."
Right. Yeah. Listen, if you could tell me how to, get my kids to take out the garbage on Tuesday nights. I mean, like you said, we teach complicated stuff that, they might have 15,000 employees that have to figure out how to do this. I can't get my son to take out the garbage regularly.
Yeah. So what leads to this book?
Well, so the first 5 were all on customer experience, and we would, dabble with employee experience, but we really realized that you can't get anyone to do anything unless they're feeling it on the inside. And you really have to, and I think that was one of the silver linings of the pandemic. Listen, at least in the U.S., and we're still kind of experiencing it, but from the end of 2009, until recently, we've had the longest stretch of a booming economy.
Right.
And there's good things, but there's bad things. When it's the busy bus is out front, and it's a great time. As entrepreneurs and leaders, we take the eye off the important things, and one of the important things is culture. It's who we're hiring. I think the 2 biggest mistakes we've all been guilty of. I've been guilty of it too in my companies. Since like the pandemic, the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, is hiring just anyone to replace the ones we lost. But even worse, keeping the bad performers, because I need 10 people. If I get rid of Bill and Jeremy and so, now I'll need 13. And I had a leadership epiphany, Bill. Have you ever heard the quote, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with? We've all heard that, right? Love that quote. I've said it ad nauseum to my children, ad nauseum to my new employees, and then who do we blame if you, I, or one of our kids is hanging around undesirables? Who do we blame? You, right? Bill, if you're hanging around undesirables who are getting you to go out after work and have too many cocktails and not getting home when you should, and all the other things, we're saying, Bill, that's on you. You need to choose better who you hang around with. Well, here's my leadership epiphany that I literally lost sleep at when it hit me. Our employees don't get to choose the 5 they hang around with at work. We do.
Yeah.
And now we got a rock star who we've surrounded with C- players because we did the wrong things. And then that rock star, one or two things going to happen. That rock star is going to gravitate to them, and we're going to say, what the hell happened to Sally? Or that rock star is going to get the hell out of here because they don't like working with C- players. So that really bothered me that my employees don't get to choose their 5. I do for them. And we got to be careful at that.
Well, if you've worked for someone else or observed it closely before, the team knows the person that is insufferable, or the couple of people that just like, oh my God, they take the time, they don't deliver, they're a drag on us. And very often we see in my world, I talk with a leader who's got a concern about someone, they finally let him go. And after some reserve, and everybody else is like, thank God. And some people say it like really directly like that. And everybody else is like, thank you. You saw it. Like, we all knew they were a pain in the ass.
One of my favorite quotes, well, it's not my favorite. It's kind of my least favorite quote, but it's true. And it's the hardest thing to do as leaders. It's better to lose the sale than the reputation. Right. And, God, I could take 3 more clients if I just had a few more consultants, or I could, so we just hire consultants. They're not the ideal ones, but now we could take you on as a client, and it's nothing like you heard. It's nothing like you expected. And, we lose you. And not only do we lose you in the future sales, but what are you saying about us? You're doing brand terrorism about and we're talking about any company, but that's so hard to say because I want sales, everyone wants sales, but sometimes it's better to lose the sales because, if I can't take care of you today, it'll actually make you want to do business with me more because we're so hard to get in with, versus just give you anyone and disappoint you. I'll never recover from that.
Yeah. A couple of things I think are really useful around that, worth pointing out. One of them is, why do we hang on to people that we shouldn't hang on to, right? We live in hope. We feel like it's going to be hard on them. We want them to be better. We see something good in them. I had a coach once who told me, listen, you don't have to work against them. You just have to decide how much time and energy you're going to give that person. I had some people in my life at the time, both professionally and otherwise, who were sucking up my time and with weird dramas and stuff. She's like, do you really want to spend all your time on that? Maybe you wish them well, but you make a lot less time and energy available for them. And then you're essentially moving, because you're going to be surrounded by 5 people. Those people move out of the 5 or the 10 or the 15, and they move way down. And it's not, you said, you're my enemy, I never could speak to you, you're dead to me. It's just, you said, you're not getting so much of my time anymore. And I've had people that I could appreciate their whole world. You're a great person, you're a great parent, there's a lot of redeeming qualities, and you can't work here anymore. And I know this time is going to be hard for you, but it's time for you to move on because you're never going to win here, or you've done something wrong and we just can't move forward. But you're not evil. I wish you well.
We may be holding them back from a career and a job somewhere else. And here's my rule of thumb. First, high maintenance employees, whatever that looks like, steal our time from patting the rock stars on the back saying, Bill, Brandon, you are crushing it. I am so lucky to have you. I don't get to do that. I don't say that because I'm chasing the fires of the ones. But here's my rule of thumb if it's time to go separate ways. If I hire a new employee and I hope they don't sit with at lunch or go out for coffee or beers with a couple of, certain employees, because I
Yeah.
know they're going to, their negativity is going to, poison them. That's when I know it's time to move on. If I'm afraid new employees will be, will hang out with those employees.
If I have to warn you about somebody.
Yeah. Right.
Well, welcome here, but hey, be careful of Carol.
Right.
That John, man, maybe steer clear of him.
But listen, the real impetus for the book is the vast majority of the world's population can't avoid working in their lifetime, right? Most people have to,
right.
And people say, "Oh, you're not what you do," but I disagree. Work is such a important part and such a amount of time. I mean, when we meet people within if we met socially, our wives brought us together. Bill, it's going to be within the first 30 seconds. What do you do? And what do you do? And we're going to talk about that. And it's so important as leaders that we create environments where people can live, extraordinary lives and find meaning and purpose. And I really believe we need to build those types of jobs.
Be proud of it. Be proud of the place. In our world, my friend and the overall leader of our coaching organization is a guy named John Ratliff, who's started a call center business. And one of his insights that led to extraordinary growth and profit is that happy employees create profitable call centers. And he's like, this whole industry doesn't treat people well and has super high turnover and low results. Maybe we should take care of people. And they went to work on taking care of people, letting call center employees feel valued, appreciated, seen and heard, related. And their turnover, their customer sat, everything improved when they put the focus on the employee. And he went through a big roll up and then a very profitable exit as a result of that, right? Like, that's fantastic when we see that. You've worked with many companies. I don't know, maybe talk
that the norm. Like, why, do we pay people the least, invest in them the least, and wonder why we have high turnover, and then we bitch about them?
Well, I'm giving them a job, damn it. They should be grateful.
Right. I don't think our employees owe us anything. I don't think they owe us anything. If they're doing the job, listen, I've had people I've written checks for and helped them get through, crises. But if tomorrow they decide they have a better opportunity, they didn't owe me anything.
Yeah. I think if you come from a place of generosity and abundance, right, you're grateful for your employees' time, even though you're paying for them, you don't feel entitled to their best effort. You are grateful for what they do, even though you're paying for them, right? Like, and then you're getting their heart and soul because you're finding ways to engage them and connect what you care about, the business cares about, with what they actually care about, and help them find the connection between those things, right?
Yeah. I mean, we all want to grow, and the only way to grow is to have people that stay with us. Not everyone's going to retire in 30 years and get a gold watch. But so many times, I tell people, all right, you're a restaurant or, frontline employee that, isn't, normally going to retire. It's a temporary transitional job, if you will. And I say, what's the average, tenure of your frontline employee, whatever that may be? And they may say 8 months. I said, what if we can get to 1.2, 1 year, 2 months, just moving that needle. And then I just spoke in Vegas to Fat Brands and they have 18 quick casual, fast casual restaurants under their different brands, 18 different brands under their parent company. And so there was like 1,500 people in there and GMs and the franchisees. And I asked them to bring up the house lights. I say, I want to ask you this. How many people got in the restaurant industry 10, 15, 30 years ago, thinking this was going to be a temporary transitional job until something better came along? And you'd have to count the hands that didn't go up of the 1,500 people. Are we painting that picture to young Brandon when he's interviewing or when orientation, saying, Brandon, I know you're just answering phones today, or you're just, whatever the frontline entry level position. But let me tell you something, Brandon. You see Bill over there? He was doing your job 16 years ago. Today, he's a partner. Today, he's the VP. Today, he's the COO. And making sure that people realize this doesn't have to be a temporary transitional job. And if it is, great, work your tail off, and we'll help you, and we'll build your resume, and let me know what you want to be doing in 5 years. I know a lot of people. You want to let me make an introduction, right?
Yeah.
But we got to paint the picture and show the opportunities.
Many years ago, I worked for a restaurant company. I had a number of restaurant jobs, super valuable experience. And this company was very clear. Like, the vast majority of people who come here, it's a stepping stone to something else. And we're proud of that. We'll prepare you for the next thing. But it could be here. You could advance here. You could become, a crew lead. You could become a manager. You could become head of the kitchen. You could become a GM, like you could become a regional. There is a career track here. And some people went and worked there. And I remember going back to that restaurant 20 years later, and some of the same people were still working there in different capacities. And this is awesome. And some of them actually made a career of that. Other people, but they didn't reject it. Like, if you're not with us, you're against us, and you can't leave. And so it was like, yes, this is a place that some people make a career of, other people transition, and it could be both in and out. Like, it was very like eyes open about all of that, which is pretty cool.
Bill, something that you've heard me speak, and in my past books, we talk about how to make a connection. The key is focusing on the other person and not me. And so we teach, and you may have heard me say this, is focus on the other person's Ford. Okay. FORD. Family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And in a casual conversation, this gets me off of me and find it out about you. Well, we bring this back to work too. So when we're for leaders, when we do leadership workshops or whatever, we will, pre-populate the people that you directly report to you, the people that directly report to Brandon, the people that, and then we'll say, all right, Bill, you got, 10 direct reports, fill out the Ford on them. And it's harder than you think. I've been humbled that my assistant, executive assistant, that I could, I knew she had 2 kids. I think one was a girl, one was a boy. Shame on me that, she has pictures on her desk. Like, that was really humbling that I couldn't remember. Now I know it's Mackenzie and Brandon and Landon. I said it wrong. But anyway, the O, which stands for occupation. Now everyone thinks, right, that's easy. They work for me. No. What you have to know on there is, what's their 5-year goal? Where do they want to be in 5 years? And exactly what we're talking about. I'd love to be in Bill's position, or I've always wanted to work in the media industry, or this or this. And that's what I always say is, help people get there. If that means somewhere else, hey, I got a friend, Bill Gallagher. He does this. He could probably make it. You can intern with him, or he might know connections. And whether they work for you for 6 months or 6 years, they're going to be a great employee. But I will tell you that they will be a brand evangelist, and you'll get more clients and more future employees. Those are the stories you want to go viral, not just the rags to riches that stayed, but the ones you help get to where they wanted to go.
I learned everything in this company, and I got and I recommend to you. And that's so brilliant. I had a client like this a few years ago that was like, I just can't get my people to do anymore, Bill. And I was getting ready to lead a session with his team and one of our quarterly planning and learning sessions. And he's like, I can't. We have the session the next day. And I'm like, well, what have you tried? And he's like, we've tried spiffs and things like that. And I'm like, great. And they don't seem to make any difference. I'm like, well, what do your people really want and care about? He's like, I don't really know. Well, tell me about them. And he like, well, this one does that job and that one does that. I'm like, okay, you you're missing something with your people. So I had some time, and I said, let me go around and talk to people. So I just popped around people's offices. I said, hey, could I talk to you for a minute and tell me a little bit more about you, and tell me about your family, your relationship, right? What do you do, and how long you've been here, and where will you go from here, and that kind of thing. And then I went back to the CEO after a handful of conversations. And I'm like, okay, who has never traveled outside the country? Like, I don't know. Who is getting ready to buy or would like to buy a house? Who's ready to start a family? Who'd like to go back to college? He had no idea the answer to any of these questions. I'm like, all those are your people. And when you can connect your spiffs or whatever you want to do, your performance goals, even if you're not paying them anything extra for it, but you connect how working on that will lead them to the other thing or enable them and give them skills that they can transfer. When you could do that, and they'll not only you'll be speaking to them and they'll experience that you know them and care and are connected to them. And then even the little things you say will have more power. He did that, and the company went through a pretty significant growth period, more than 50% growth. We ended up with 3 times growth over the next couple of years because they were more connected and related. There's a struggle, though, for each of us, and that is that we get very, like, I know and love people, but I'm also obsessed with what I want and what I'm working on. And I forget to stop and take care of and connect to people. I have to remember to do it, because just like taking care of and being related to people, I tend to take for granted. And I think a lot of our listeners, a lot of our CEOs are in the same position, right?
We got to build it in. Exactly. I mean, I could be so tunnel focused that, the house on fire next door to me could be on fire and I wouldn't know it, because I get so tunnel focused. So we got to build that in. And one of the things we talk about in the book, and I think our employees really like working for us. We've had a lot, in our 3 different companies that have worked, a lot nearing 30 years, 27, 23. So, that tells us something. But one of the biggest benefits they brag about is we talk about training the whole person, not just the professional side that'll make you more productive and profitable for me. And so here's how we train it. And it really doesn't cost us anything, but we train on the 5 F's. And the 5 F's usually what are the most common New Year's resolutions. So it's things that people care about, right? So it's finance, it's family, it's fitness, faith, and fun. Okay.
Yeah.
And the faith isn't religious as much as it's positivity. That's what we mean by, not getting sucked into the doom scrolling and, all that stuff. So what we do is, it's not mandatory. It's optional if you want it. We'll have a mortgage letter come in or Zoom in next Friday. Anyone that wants to buy a house, and send them your information. And what he'll do, and we have a lot of young workers, and he'll say, all right, young Bill, 25-year-old Bill, based on what you make, here's what you can afford. Here's what your mortgage would be. Here's what you're going to need to save. Now, the last time we did this was probably 2022. 19 people bought their first house as a result. Mortgage lender, we don't have to pay because he just got 19 new customers. But people say, number one question I get, you probably get this too, Bill, is how do I get this generation to come to work? Have them get a mortgage. That'll help. But we have that. People who want to be better parents. We'll use Arnie's Better Book Club. And hey, here's a great book. Here's a great podcast you should listen to. And then you guys get together and meet. And we'll, some things in house we can do, like a time management or, things like that. But the people love that we're helping them be a whole person, and that we're just not, what can you do for me, from an efficiency standpoint.
Those 5 F's are really central to our personal planning process that we recommend people do between late November and early January. Work with your people, give them an opportunity to do personal planning the way you do business planning, start to think long-term about what you want to do, and then what are the habits that you would change in the next 90 days to get started on that. It's really central to that, and letting people explore all of that. I bought my first house at the age of 25, and it was a powerful, important step in my life, right? And many people today don't even think about it. Like it's just a bridge too far and stuff. But you're right. It does. It encourages growth. It brings stability. It anchors people. There's a little more commitment involved than just renting another place and disposing of it and moving on. And really powerful. Before we get too far afield, let's talk about a couple of these things. You mentioned the wrong order test, and tell us about that story and how that's important to fit. And
Yeah, that's in the chapter of recruitment experience, and first off, we have to be people are like recruitment experience. Well, it's different than it was 5, 10, 25 years ago. If I'm a young person, which I'm not, but if I am and I hear you're hiring, I'm going to apply and hope I get the job. Right? My buddy works for you. My mom was a customer. Whatever it is. Today, most people know it's an employee market. And they're going to interview at the 5 different companies, 5 different industries, and see who gives them the best deal, whatever that is to them. So our recruitment experience, we want, if you're going to interview with us and then go somewhere else after, we want that next interview to pale in comparison, right? So there's a lot of great things, but one of the things is we also want to filter and see if, we call it making the interview process ungameable. And what I mean by that is most people can wing it for a half an hour. I know, Bill, that you're probably going to ask me on an interview what my 2 biggest challenges are. And I'm going to pause and think and say, I'm a workaholic and a perfectionist, right? Bam, I nailed that one. So we like to build in things that people don't know what they're actually being observed on. So, there's a lot of great practice, but my favorite one, the wrong order test. Charles Schwab, their CEO, Walter Benning Jr., who's like one of my favorite CEOs today, just so many great things he does. When it's a C-level candidate, internal or external, and he's involved in the interview process, he'll have that candidate meet him at his favorite diner. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you show up and we sit down and you sit down with him and you have breakfast. The diner knows that anything that the candidate orders, anyone other than Walt, that gets screwed up. You order French toast, you're getting, scrambled eggs. You ask for ketchup, you're getting Tabasco sauce. And it's to see how you handle yourself, that person handles themselves in a stressful situation when things aren't going right, how they treat the server, and if they could stay calm and in place. So I love it. It's just different ways to make the interview process ungameable. Do you remember Columbo? Are you old enough to remember Columbo?
There's just one thing that's bothering me here. Right. Like you said.
Yeah, right. And that's how I interview. When I interview, I'm like just disheveled. I can't find your resume. Bill, before we get to the interview, I see that you grew up in, and I see that you ran track. What was that like? And we just go down rabbit holes and you don't think the interview has started yet. Well, the interview started. I'm just trying to gauge if you're always a victim and the coach played favorites and this and that, and just really picking up on your vibe. I don't care what the resume says. So I'm like Columbo, just totally try to take it, let your guard down, think we're just being 2 guys just talking. The interview's on.
Yeah. I think there are many different versions of this that get past the veneer. So many people can ace an interview and then screw up the job. Right. So practical tests, assessment tools, unusual situations, personal asides, changing the environment, all these kinds of things are helpful in sort of cracking that polish, that veneer of, I'm a perfectionist who just works too hard, right? Because when you look at 60, if I was looking for a job, and you were interviewing me and then you're like, I really think you should be my COO. I'd be like, oh my God, I should never be anybody's COO. That would be a terrible job for me. If you need me to launch a new division or upgrade your strategy, or those are things I could do. But right. I like designing operations. I don't like running operations.
Right. Right. You're the visionary.
Right. So that self-awareness and self-acceptance. Like, I'm not beating myself up anymore for being who I am, but that's 60, right? That's
right.
not
25-year-old, oh,
25
I could be, yeah.
anything, right? But of course you
Right.
can't. But you both don't really know yourself, and you haven't accepted yourself. You're still trying to be ways that you're never going to be at
Yeah.
25. Most of us, right?
Yeah, our interview process, we talk about, there's certain questions we just ask it. We can care less about the answer, but they get you talking.
Yes.
Like one
Yeah.
of our questions is, Bill, when you don't work, what's your favorite thing to do? And Bill, I could care less. You don't get extra points if it's what I like to do, or if it's fly fishing, or we're looking to see if you show enthusiasm for when you talk about something you love to do. If you don't show enthusiasm for that, you're not gonna have enthusiasm for anything.
Yeah.
So it's like that.
Watch TV. The sad sack. Though, I made a mistake with this once, and I'm like, I checked all the things. I have a good process. They have the right experience. I enjoy talking to them. We have a similar hobby, and we got down a rabbit hole of enjoying that. And then I hired the person, and they were not well suited to the job, and they made some fundamental mistakes. And I skewed too much on the fact that, well, I could talk to them. I like them, right? Like, we bonded over a common hobby. Not always a good idea. Skewed too much to that.
I want to share with you, I love that we've learned from great companies is instead of, like, let's say we're interviewing, we have 8 candidates. Instead of spending an hour on each on the first interview, these companies bring them all in for the first round of interview. But here's where the ungameable goes. So they'll ask all 8, hey, tell me a time when you went above and beyond for a customer, whatever the question is. Again, we don't care about the. What's that?
Lululemon does that one.
Yes.
Famous.
Yes. Yeah. And so the candidate thinks they're being judged on who has the best answer. Right. So Bill's, saying this, I'm like, oh, I'm going to crush his story. I'm going to one up him. Right. But what the interviewer is really looking for is what the candidates are doing when they're not answering. So Bill's answering, and I'm looking at my Apple Watch, and I'm checked out, or I'm focused on what I'm going to say. Or someone else is looking at Bill. Bill says something funny. The other candidate smiles, nods, is making Bill feel good. And that's what they're looking for, right? But the candidates think it's who has the best answer. So that's the ungameable part that's really good.
Yeah, I love that. That's not normal, not typical, right? Really useful. Talk to us about then bringing people in, the reorientation, the Ritz-Carlton, how there's so much we can learn from that company.
Love this. Learned it like 25 years ago. We started doing it. The reorientation is so we'll have employees that, let's say we have a new group of employees, 6 or 8 starting this month. Well, that means if we have six or 8, we'll have probably a orientation class of 15. And what that is you reorientate as an existing employee every other year. So if you were hired in 21, 23, 25, 27, you're going to retake orientation. And there's several reasons for it. Number one, hopefully our orientation has improved since the last time you took it. Number two, the existing employees take over the class. And they start saying, oh, dude, you have no idea how lucky you are. When I was hired, we had a chisel and slate. Now you got a computer. We had to walk to work barefoot uphill in the snow both ways, but it's good. But they get really protective. But the other thing, there's so many benefits. The new employees meet the cool kids on the team. And so now when I start work next Monday, I know Bill, because I just went through orientation, and Bill has, gravitas, and Bill's like, John, come over here and meet everyone. Right. And the existing employees always get re-energized. They have a bounce in their step. They forgot about the story, where we came from and what it took to get here. And so it's just really, really cool. It's one of the best things we've ever gotten.
I love that. participating and reviewing it, it's really unusual and not normal. And it's not as necessarily a new employee. You might have a different role, a different voice, different things to share and stuff, but you're kind of going back through it, and then you're getting old and new together, learning the things. I used to lead parts of the new hire orientation for Sprint employees. And my boss did another part of it on the regular, and he would kind of do some big picture things, and I would talk about some other things. And it was a really great experience to connect with people, and it was a pretty robust process. But this is like the idea of going back through it and coming back through and sitting alongside people just coming in is novel and unique. I think there's so much we can learn. You were speaking earlier about empowering people to fix things and so on. And the Ritz-Carlton is really famous for that. Like, how do you know they're going to do it? Well, they've hired people who care, who fit the values, who know the values, right? But they've also empowered them to actually do something. You have something wrong with your room or your food or whatever, anybody can fix it, right? They don't have to go get approval because it's going to cost some money.
Yeah. It's kind of like the ask once promise, and this is great for call centers. They do this study, and everyone will cringe because they'll know, we're all guilty of this. But how many channels I have to switch from, meaning I might be on your website and I couldn't get it, so I had to call. I get, your customer service rep, and she can't handle it, and she has to escalate it. And then every time it gets transferred, and I have to retell my story again. It's like, oh, sorry, wrong. She shouldn't have transferred to me. And by the fifth time, I'm like, embellishing the story and angry and screaming. So it's called the ask once promise, where the first person that gets it owns it. And they may have to go to other channels, but they're not going to make you bill. I got that. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call you back within 30 minutes. Is that okay, Bill? Is that a good time? Great. And then they do all the stuff that they were going to throw you through the channel, or they stay on the call with you, and do what's called the hot transfer, where, warm transfers when they pass you. Hot transfers, they stay with you. Bill, I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. And they explain the situation to the person so you don't ever have to re-explain it again.
Yeah, I think that's just genius. And you think about it, we recognize it in other companies, right? But we don't necessarily look in the mirror and go, I don't do that one, but what do I do that's like that, right?
Yes.
Where are my systems designed to thwart and not empower people to actually fix anything? Where there's so many checks and balances and barriers to actually fixing something for someone, resolving it, and maybe even making up for the inconvenience and the displeasure of the breakdown in the first place. So we call any major company today, temporary call volume. Calls are very high right now. No, they're always high with you. You just don't staff enough. It's BS. And you're making people wait because you don't actually want to staff or pay people to resolve it. And then when you put people on the phone in whatever country is the cheapest possible place to get somebody to answer the phone, right, with second language English proficiency.
Right.
And then those people have no ability to fix anything. They read scripts at you and stuff like that, and you just want to reach through the phone and choke them, but it's not their fault. The whole system is designed to thwart them, right? And it doesn't even matter. Some of your highest level customers will get treated like this. I used to fly a whole bunch with United Airlines. Unfortunately, United Airlines has so many million-mile flyers that I was still chumped to them, even flying a bunch. And I found myself with a canceled flight overseas. And they're like, oh, well, great. We're going to reroute you through Istanbul, and it's great. You'll be on Turkish Airlines, and they're one of our partners and that kind of thing. And we made the reservation, and I got taken care of really quickly, except the systems didn't talk to each other. The systems didn't talk to each other. And so Turkish Airlines is standing there going, well, we see this here, but there's no ticket. There's no, we can't put you on because we're not getting paid for this thing. So the guy walks up to the counter next to me, and he's that ultimate level. He's their global, what is it? Global assist or whatever. It's the global, whatever, global services. So he's a global services travel. He gets in the global services. That person actually fixed it. I, with a jillion miles, get no fix, and I languish there for 6 hours at the counter while they go back and forth and try and redo it. Incompetent people with systems that don't actually talk to each other, and nobody fixing anything with any authorization to work around the system.
Yeah.
Until they finally close the flight and send it off. And then at midnight, they find me a hotel and send me off in a car, and I have to come back the next day and make another flight, right? So almost got a one-stop, easy kind of thing with a Turkish Airlines is a lovely airline to fly in. Actually, better experience than United, generally speaking, and totally screwed up, right? But only the like bleeding edge of something, right? You could spend $60,000 a year with United Airlines and not get that global services kind of experience, right?
Right.
What is that? And why do we have that again and again? Your call is important to us. We are experiencing unusual call volumes. It's total lie, right? But it's easy to see with a company like United. It's not so easy to see. And I'll be flying United in it. They'll probably make it hell on me now.
Yeah.
In a couple of weeks. Well, what does your company do that's like that, where you've tied the hands of your employees? You haven't just said, look, fix whatever it is, make it right, be smart, you care about the business, but care about the people too. Don't give away nothing for somebody who's just being difficult. But if they've been harmed, if they've been inconvenienced, take care of them.
Well, there's something called the service recovery paradox. And you've experienced it on both sides of a business owner and as a client. Everyone watching, listening has. And the service recovery paradox says, if you come in to do business with any company and your expectations are this, and they give it to you, right? Yeah. You may or may not be loyal, right? I mean, you're not like, oh my God, right? Yeah. But if they drop the ball, screw up, say, oh my God, but they make it right, you're going to be 10 times more loyal. And so I always joke around, let's screw up first, right? Because, and I have a story about this. So when I was involved in the salons 25 plus years ago, I used to say, if it gets to me, it's free. Meaning if you had to call me, I'm not going to argue with you. Whatever you want. And my salon coordinators, whatever I give Bill or his wife, it's going to come out of your quarterly bonus. And the whole message I was saying is take care of it at the salon level. No one wants to call the owner, the GM up. I mean, when they do, they're pissed. And they've told 20 people in the meantime. So I had a story where someone called me up and said, it wasn't hard to get my number. My number was plastered all over the place. But she called me up and says, Mr. DiJulius, I'm a client of your Solon location. And I was just in recently and they got hair color on my suit jacket. And I was like, God, it's horrible. Why didn't we have, whatever. I'm we'll take care of it. We'll get it cleaned. Can't. Try. I said, oh. Yeah. And she goes, the jacket's worthless the suit's worthless without the jacket. And I said, all right, how much was it? And she's like, this is a long time ago, but she's like $250, $275. Can I send you a check? And she's like, you don't want to hold, you don't want to know how old it is? I'm like, no. She goes, you don't want to see it? I said, no, not necessary. She was shocked, hung up, look up her address to send her a $275 check. And I send her a half-hour massage for her inconvenience. And as I'm on her screen, I see she's been coming for 3 years. She comes about 6 or 7 times a year. She's not like amazing, but good client. And she's never referred anyone. So I sent her the check, the gift card. I'm telling the story like a year and a half later. Someone says, well, did you retain her? I'm like, good question. So I look her up. She came in another 7 times. I'm like, oh, yeah. And then I clicked on referrals. She referred 18 new clients in that since I'm like, oh, my God. Like, where could I spend $275 and get 18 new clients? So I tell my hairdressers, get color on everyone's clothes, right? But that's the service recovery paradox. Like if she's now so much more loyal than if nothing ever went wrong.
Yeah. That's really, really powerful and simple. That idea that when you take care of people, they and fix a problem versus a non-event kind of thing, that actually makes them really care, because you've now dealt something and you've built a connection with someone. There's trust there. There's an expectation of something, and they want all their friends to be similarly taken care of, right?
But more importantly, Bill, to your point, forget the customer. Well, that's important. You know who feels the best? The employee, because they weren't a punching bag. They weren't sorry. That's our policy. There's nothing I can do about it. Here's headquarters. Call them. Here's an email. They were allowed to fix it without the fear of getting in trouble.
Yeah.
And they got, that they had job, satisfaction. They got to go home at night and say, honey, guess what I got to do for a client today? Right.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing about it.
I think the thing that people struggle with, and it's worth acknowledging, look, there are badly behaved people out there. There are people that are trying to take advantage of the situation and do that kind of thing. And you will come across that. And that's a different kind of situation. I sold to Nordstrom for over 20 years. And there were things about it as a customer and as a vendor that were at odds with each other. I had problems with a suit once. My cleaners lost, I forget the pants or the jacket. I went into Nordstrom. I'm like, is there some way that I could buy the whatever? I really love this suit. And they're like, they went to the back, they found the same suit. They're like, here you go. And they gave me the other part of it. And then, but I know what they did is they took the pants or the jacket and they sent it back to, I think it was the pants that were lost. Then they sent the jacket back to the vendor. And instead of just selling the jacket as a standalone, then they sent the pants back and they said, oh, this one's missing something.
Wow.
Because we knew that some Nordstrom employees would actually damage goods to send them back to us when they didn't when they wanted to balance it. So there can be excesses in it.
No,
and
there can be. There can be.
Came in. I remember Nordstrom called us once from their loss prevention team, and they're like, yeah, we've got a suspicious pattern with an individual showing up at multiple stores with goods. And then we looked at the goods that were returned. Like, those goods, not only were they never sold at Nordstrom, but they weren't really sold anywhere. And then we figured out that we had a problem with a leak with a disgruntled employee who was leaking them to a counterpart who was selling them back and doing a return at Nordstrom. So things can get out of hand, and you have to watch for that. And of course, we dismissed that person, and we said that this lapse is inexcusable. And it became clear that there was a profound hardship and a reason for the thing, but there was a fundamental character flaw, right? That's a different conversation.
My whole thing is for employees and customers, don't punish 98% for what you're afraid 2%.
Yes.
And I will trust all 100.
Yes.
And live with the 2% to take advantage of me, because what I get back from the 98% that can't believe how we handled it. Now, Reed, this is in my book, Reed Hastings from Netflix. He said, exact same story. He said, when his first company, I forget what it was before Netflix, he said it was built on policies and restrictions. And he said it was a horrible place to work. And he said it was his fault. He said because a couple people took advantage, employees. Oh, we need a policy for that. Oh, we need a policy for that. And it was all about policies and restrictions that no one liked working there. And then, when he started Netflix, he says, listen, if we find a pattern, we'll get rid of that employee or address it, but we're not going to punish everyone and say, if you come in 5 minutes early, you have to work 5 minutes later. We trust that you're going to get your work done, and you'll know if you need to work a little later today, or if you get it done, and you God bless you.
Well, all this great customer service starts with great, happy, engaged employees, and that is the subject of the book, The Employee Experience Revolution. Get your employees right, and it'll lead to it. Go get the book at the DiJuliusGroup.com. That's the place to get it. John, thank you so much for talking with us today, for sharing your stories and client experiences and that kind of thing. It's been super valuable. I've enjoyed it. We've run long now. I want to thank our listeners and viewers for joining us once again. I hope it's been helpful to you. If you dug it, share it with somebody else who could use it. Pass it along. Spread spread the wisdom that John has to share with us with somebody else. I want to give a big shout out and thanks to my friend and mentor, Vern Harnish, who created the whole Scaling Up framework that we use. That's the cornerstone of our business. And to the folks at Storyon who got our show produced and ready, Cameron, Seth, Christelle, each week. So thanks again, everyone, for watching, for listening. Go find us at scalingcoach.com along with all the back catalog of shows. We'll talk to you again next time. Until then, keep scaling.